Good morning. Today is Sunday, March 17th, 2024. Since October 7th, I have been haunted. My first thought, besides the obvious ones we all had on hearing the news from Israel, but my first personal thought, and it stays with me every single day, was to think back just a few days earlier to the words that I shared at ADATH before Ne'ilah on Yom Kippur. I always use that heightened moment to share what I feel is my most important and emotional message. I noted that this past Yom Kippur was the 50th anniversary of the Yom Kippur War, 1973. And I said as follows: today, 50 years later, as Yom Kippur comes to a close, our thoughts are again on Israel's safety. The external threat from our enemies is constant and deadly, but the internal threat, the uncivil, vociferous arguing among Israelis, descending to hatred and even to violence of Jew against Jew, is no less but perhaps more dangerous and certainly more damaging. I said, this is not about politics. This is about Jews on both sides being able to live together in spite of their differences. We here in Montreal offer our deep concern and our support, and we pray, Simcha li'artzenu, God bring joy to your land, v'sason li'recha, and gladness to your city, the city of Jerusalem. And most fervently we pray, ufros alea sukkah shlomecha, spread over us your canopy of peace. Yesterday at ADATH, our scholar in residence, Professor Shahar Lifshitz from Bar Ilan Law School, suggested that just as God, after the terrible debacle of the golden calf, gave the Jewish people a second chance with a second set of luchos, perhaps after the terrible catastrophe of October 7th, and which continues every day, perhaps we now have a second chance to preserve the unity that immediately blossomed in Israel and around the world amidst the horror of that day, the beginning of the war. And perhaps we have a chance to institutionalize it, to make civility and a certain level of unity a reality again of Israeli life and Jewish life. Perhaps to bring the center to the fore and reject the shrill extremists on all sides. And Professor Lifshitz gave us a roadmap that he and others are working on to make it happen. And I will attempt to briefly share it with you now. Let's start with the court system in Israel and use that as a paradigm for both the political and the societal realms. In Israel, and this is practiced elsewhere, Every divorcing couple is required to go to mediation first, to try to find a compromise on child custody, division of assets, etc. Because reaching a compromise is so much better for the couple, for the children if there are children, and for society in general. So much better than fighting in court. Now, the essence of mediation is a mindset. In any serious disagreement, a mediator must first listen carefully to both sides. And each will have a number of complaints and demands. But then, the mediator must be able to identify which are the core issues, the red lines each cannot cross, as opposed to the supporting issues that kind of get piled on, where compromise is relatively easy. I say relatively. Now, once those core red line issues are identified and clarified, and the secondary issues are set aside, a good mediator may be able to suggest a solution that protects both sides' deepest underlying concern. Now, to make this work requires a mindset that both sides are willing to give up on their most extreme demands and focus on the core, fundamental issue. And not infrequently, it works. And by the way, this is an extremely helpful mindset in every area of life for every single one of us. But listen to this. Professor Lifshitz argued that this approach could be used in other areas of law. For example, cases that involve conflicts over religion, which is so tense, and there are so many controversies in Israel over this wide category of issues. And he shared with me several realistic examples of actual cases where this approach could work. And he is actively trying to get this accepted. Now, if we take this model to the political realm, this requires the all too silent center to speak up and to vote for compromise, not extremists, on all sides. In Israeli society, this requires creating places, spaces where people of different backgrounds and beliefs can comfortably gather to discuss civilly their differences and look for common ground, which is always more abundant when the voices are gentler and the anger is lowered. It's amazing that if we just lower the temperature a little bit, the common ground becomes so much easier to see and appreciate. Now, this plan is idealistic, but we are hearing it from many Israelis, and we are seeing shoots and buds blossom across Israel and beyond. A few weeks ago, Yoni Heilman, who I have quoted before, wrote in his Diary of an IDF Soldier, "I've been thinking a lot about public discourse here in Israel. For those of us called up to war, we may all wear the same green uniform, but like the rest of the nation, we are not a monolith, but a spectrum of experiences, opinions, and backgrounds. But critically, we have not forgotten that we are on the same team, that we are fighting the same fight, that our unit or role or sector doesn't matter because there's too much at stake. We talk about the war, but also about politics, religion, and life. We don't always disagree, but we are still on the same side. He continues, my unit is gearing up for a major effort. That preparation involves exercises in the field, lots of maps and strategy and planning, but mostly it involves listening. And when we listen carefully. We listen to generals with years of perspective, but also to young commanders with relative experience from the past several months. The stakes are too high for us not to listen to everyone, to consider everything carefully, especially when it goes against what we believe to be true. Now, please hear me carefully, the words of Yoni. So I want to call on all of you, especially those in Israel, but not only those here. This time, it's your turn to adjust to our reality. Argue, debate, disagree all you want. But do not forget for even 1 second that we are fighting for the future of our country and our nation. The stakes are too high for us not to listen to one another carefully, to speak gently, to remember that at the end of the day, we are all on the same side. And most importantly, to listen. Even more stark and receiving a lot more publicity are the words that were spoken last week by Brigadier General Dan Goldfuss. He made a speech that included rare and harsh remarks directed at Israel's political leaders. Brigadier General Dan Goldfuss is the commander of the IDF's 98th Division, and this past Wednesday he said that they, Israel's political leaders, must push away extremism so as not to return to October 6th, the day before the attack, and everything that went on before that. I ask at this opportunity to address our leaders from both sides, and I hope they will have the time to listen to the heart of a soldier. Goldfuss says he's been fighting since the morning of October 7th, and I have not stopped fighting since. Since then, I have not stopped sending soldiers and gone with them into the fire. We are fighting. We are not getting tired. We are determined to win and determined to bring home the hostages. He continued with words of amazing honesty and responsibility. He said, we bow our heads over our resounding failure on October 7. But at the same time, we push forward, carry out operations at the highest level of quality, protect our values, and attain many achievements on the battlefield. But you, listen carefully, speaking to Israel's political leaders, but you need to be worthy of us. You need to be worthy of the soldiers who lost their lives. You need to be worthy of the reservists who don't care what political side they're on, and they fought and fight alongside each other. You must make sure we do not return to October 6th, that all the effort and sacrifice won't be in vain. From my heart, I ask of you to be together, united, push away the extreme and adopt the togetherness. Find what unites us. We on the battlefield found it, and we will not give up on it. And he concluded, make it worth it. Make it worth it. So I say to you and to me that we must support in any way we can the voices, the efforts to find common ground, to find compromise. We have a second chance to reject October 6th and what came before it and forge a new path forward. Make it worth it. Thank you, Professor Lifshitz, and may God help your words come true. My friends, I wish you a great day, and I look forward to seeing you soon in person.